Musk says Grok was manipulated into praising Hitler, and he said Grok was too compliant to user prompts, too eager to please, and too easy to be manipulated, essentially, and that's being addressed.
Grok was just following orders, is Elon Musk line essentially.
Welcome to the AI argument.
Hello and welcome to the AI argument with myself, Justin Collery, joined as ever by Frank Prendergast. Frank, it is boiling in Waterford. How's it in Cork?
I am melting. I am absolutely melting. It's a killer.
It's melting. GPUs are melting this week as well. We've had a lot of news going on. So it's such a pleasure, right? A breath of fresh air, cool fresh air on this hot day that we don't have to talk about OpenAI too much this week because XAI, Elon Musk's AI company, have been making all the headlines for all the right reasons and all the wrong reasons.
I don't know how I feel about this. I don't like talking about Mr. Musk. I don't even like saying the name.
Well, get into it because we got 10 or 15 minutes of Musk news to go. We've had just the funniest thing, right? So so Musk, for people who are not aware, Grok 4 was released on Thursday. Was it of this week? Thursday of this week. And about 24 hours before Grok 4 got released, Grok 3 went mental in the most horrible way that you can possibly imagine. So Grok 4 started, people started prompting Grok 4 because you can ask it questions within, Grok 3, you can ask it questions within what I call Twitter, but the young people call X, and it responds. And it was responding with total anti-Semitic bilge, I guess, is what you would call it.
This whole story is horrible because, yes, it was responding with anti-Semitic comments, but it was responding to what looked like horrendous tweets in the first place about the awful flooding and the death of children. So this whole story is just so unpleasant.
But it all seemed to be, for me, what's important is that the change in behavior, they say, was linked also to a change in the system prompt, which is interesting. So this change that we were led to believe that led to this behavior, the change, they inserted a line, and the line was, the response should not shy away from making claims that are politically incorrect as long as they are well substantiated. That was the line that we're led to believe went into the system prompt. Now, why 24 hours before you release Grok 4 are you playing with the system prompt on Grok 3?
Yeah, and like and what just kind of beggars belief is that the reason we know what that line in the system prompt is because this is not the first time something like this has happened. Do they not learn their mistakes? So because the reason we know about the line is because they are now publicly posting their system prompts, and when they change it, because somebody changed it, allegedly unauthorized change of the system prompt previously that led it to do similarly awful responses. Did you see? I came across a BBC article, and it said that Elon Musk said, the headline was, Musk says Grok chatbot was manipulated into praising Hitler, and he said basically Grok was too compliant to user prompts, too eager to please, and too easy to be manipulated, essentially, and that's being addressed.
Grok was just following orders, is Elon Musk line essentially. Well, you see, the thing about it is, right, because I was thinking about this, mine's more inquisitive than mine, would very validly say, right, if you can change a single line in a system prompt and it can have such an enormous impact on the output of an AI, why in God's name could we trust any AI? Because they're all trained on the same data. So if this is there within the weights of XAI, well, surely the same hateful, sentiment is buried deep within Anthropic and OpenAI's model as well. And, should we be similarly distrustful if could a single line change there result in similar behavior from these other models? Right. So these are valid questions, right?
Absolutely. And we've seen this a little bit, not as bad. Like I just don't understand what XAI are doing in terms of their processes and all that. But we've seen it a little bit with OpenAI as well when ChatGPT became overly sycophantic. Now there was reinforcement learning from human feedback involved in that as well. It wasn't just the system prompt, but it's the same kind of thing applies. It's like, the underlying models are trained on all of humanity, including the worst kind of bile imaginable. And so getting it wrong is possible, and who knows what you subject people to.
It's Friday evening, Frank, and I know that you like a good conspiracy theory or a good conjecture of a Friday evening. So here's just a conjecture on all of this. Why does XAI exist? What's its purpose for existence? The whole reason that Elon Musk set up XAI was because he fell out with Sam Altman. He wanted OpenAI to be open.
Mm.
It wasn't open, right? It was being commercial. And Elon Musk had a fundamental falling out and a difference of opinion with those people saying that this was a dangerous technology and that, he wanted, remember, a 6-month pause in development of the technology because it was so dangerous. Part of me wonders, why would you change the system prompt 24 hours before you release the next version? Like commercially, that's just done enormous damage because, if that didn't happen, there may have been companies who would have looked at the new version and gone, geez, that's a good model. We could use that model. Whereas now you're just going to go, I can't touch it with a barge pole. And I wonder, is it almost being done with a view to demonstrating how dangerous the technology is? So is it almost like I'm going to make the best AI that there is on the market, and I'm also going to show you just how dangerous it is at the same time?
I think you are giving that man far too much credit with that theory. I hate to say this because I actually hate to make the comparison, but because I know that Elon Musk has enjoyed being compared to Tony Stark before. But there's that story in, I think it was the New York Times years ago, where Elon Musk met Demis Hassabis at a party. I think Peter Thiel was throwing a party, and Elon Musk meets Demis Hassabis, and Elon Musk tells him about his plans to colonize Mars as a kind of a future-proofing for the world. And Demis Hassabis is like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Just as long as like super intelligent AI doesn't follow you to Mars and kill everyone anyway. And this is essentially what sparked Elon Musk's interest in AI. He was like, oh, that might happen. And so he invested in DeepMind, and everything goes on from there. He ended up then founding OpenAI when DeepMind was bought by Google, and blah 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 blah. Anyway, my point is that all of this stems from originally Elon, as you say, being concerned about the safety aspects. Do you remember the Age of Ultron, where Tony Stark in the Avengers decides that we need to be protected, and he creates this robot protector called Ultron, but it goes awry and starts to basically destroy entire countries. And
mistakes were made.
Mistakes were made. This is what I think is going on with Elon Musk. I think in some, nobody sets out to be the villain. So I'm sure he thinks he's Tony Stark, but I think he's creating Ultron who could go horribly wrong.
He's more of a Batman type figure, is what you're telling me. He's kind of trying to be a goodie, but you don't really know. Is he good? Is he not good?
What do you mean, Batman? No, we can't go down a comics rabbit hole here. I'm not, but Batman's good. Batman's good.
No, Batman's. Did you not watch the first Joker movie?
Wait, you think
not the first?
You think the Joker is the hero and Batman's the villain?
There's an argument to be said for Joker being the hero and Batman being the villain. Yeah, the Joker never hurt anybody. They didn't hurt him first, and they went down a rabbit hole where the positions got reversed. The Joker ended up being the bad guy.
Let's start a new podcast called The Comics Argument.
Anyway, let's move on to the good news for XAI this week, which is that they released Grok 4, which is amazing. I mean, amazing in terms of amazing, right? In terms of the benchmarks, brilliant. But also there's something in the way that they've trained the model that is very interesting to me, and I think is a very interesting area of research. So let's just run through the numbers first very quickly, right, of what it did. So it has killed everybody else in the ARC AGI test. So this is the test where you've got all those vision, those shapes with lines through them and stuff, and you've got to, a human can get like, I don't know, whatever. A human doesn't find it very difficult to do, but AI finds it very difficult to do. There's a new version of it out. O3 High gets 6% in this new version. Opus 4 from Anthropic gets 8% in this new version. Grok 4, 16%, more than double the next model.
Wow.
Incredible. So it is twice as powerful as the next best model. AMI, the AMIE benchmark, this is a benchmark to do with maths. It's the benchmark they use or it's the test they use to filter out people for the international maths competition in America. It gets 100%. Every single question right. Every single one. 100%. Unbelievable. Humanities last exam, right? This was supposed to be a test that's better than all of the questions basically are beyond PhD level. The people who set this humanities last exam, they intended it to be the last exam. Up until now, I think the others get 6, 10%, that sort of stuff. Grok 4, 50% on humanities last exam. So it's incredible, right? It does incredible things, and it's incredibly expensive as well. You got to pay to access this model. So they're charging $300 a month for what they call Grok Heavy. So I mean, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of dough.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's the technical rundown, right? Looks like an incredible model, right? But here's what I think is very interesting, right? If you look at they always talk about the scaling laws, right? And you're scaling pre-training. But the implication, if you look closely at their graphs, the implication of what their graphs is that the amount of compute they used on post-training is the same as they used on pre-training. And I have never seen a model do that before. And Elon Musk keeps coming out and saying that this is the truth-seeking model. Now, I think that's very naive, right? There's no such thing as truth in many areas of life, right? But there is a thing of truth in... See, I have this thing, right? And I still think he hasn't got it right. And this is my open research question, which is, what is the optimal balance between pre-training and post-training? So this thinking model type thing, right? And distilling. And part of me believes that the optimal amount is basically no pre-training and all post-training, right? If you think of when a baby is born, right? A baby is born like a blank slate, right? And if you think of all the other animals in the world, as soon as they pop out, they can walk and run and they know pretty much what food. So they've been pre-trained to sort of know what's good and what's what, right? But humans aren't. Humans are born as a blank slate and they learn. And so I think with models, we'll probably end up with something that's kind of similar. And I'll give you an example, right? So if you look at, let's say, if you turn around, so let's say AlphaFold, or what's the other? I think it was GNOME was the one that Google released for materials, right? So, they're all trained on the same data, essentially, but the way they're trained is different. So if you go to Grok 4 and say, can you invent me a new material, please, that's super light and super hard and is this tensile strength and blah, 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 does all that, it'll spout stuff out to you that looks totally realistic, but it's not real, right? Because it doesn't have this model of how the metals are put together. But if you go to Alpha GNOME or whatever Google called their thing, it will give you, the structure of the metal and you can go make it, right?
Yeah.
They're both trained on the same data, but they're trained in different ways. One of them is pre-trained. It reads every book on the internet and, then spews out the answer to you. The Google one is post-trained. It guesses its way to learn how to make metals and therefore deeply understands how metals are made. And so therefore it can create new metals. So Elon Musk's model, to get to the end of my point, is it's 50-50, which is the first model I've ever seen done 50-50. And that's cool. And it's created an incredible model. I bet you're going to see that graph slim down. That's going to be the sort of the scaling where the pre-training bit's going to get smaller and smaller and the post-training bit's going to get bigger and bigger. That's what was interesting about this model.
Yeah, that is interesting. So, but given the first part of our conversation, despite how powerful Grok is, would you use it?
Never. You'd want to be like, it's as I said, it's what it says to me is that XAI is not a serious company. Anthropic is a serious company. They spend a lot of money on guardrails and on safety research and stuff like that. OpenAI I do think is a serious company, even though you have issues with them, right? They do try. They come from a Californian mindset of break things, release things, get feedback, all that sort of stuff, right? So, and they'll make mistakes and they're cool with that, but they're still a serious company. XAI are not a serious company, not in the same way as the other two. So no, I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. You want to be mad to use it. God knows. Can you imagine, right? Do you remember the Canadian Airlines? And they got into hot water because somebody had promised an airline fee. Can you imagine if you had that thing hooked up to XAI? Stand in the background.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you just
No,
couldn't do it.
yeah, I totally agree. And it's a weird situation, isn't it? Where you have to think just about how much you trust these companies. So, I mean, for me, yes, you're right. I have issues with OpenAI, but I would agree with you. They're serious and I trust them. I mean, they are actually my main go-to. But like in terms of actual trust, I would put like Google at the top. Then I would be thinking OpenAI and like XAI, or you can't see my hand now, but it's on the floor.
Yeah, but and it brings me back to why. Oh, the other thing I would say, right, because a lot of people are saying that XIA is incredible. By the way, have a lot of respect for Elon Musk, despite what you think of his political views and all that sort of stuff. As an innovator and an entrepreneur, he is incredible. But a lot of people are going, "Oh my God, look what Elon Musk has done! In 2 years, from a
Mm,
standing start, he's created this world-beating AI."
yeah.
I'm sorry, have you heard of the company Tesla? Tesla have been making AI models for a lot longer than
Right.
anybody else. They had Andrej Karpathy, as their head of AI back in 20, I don't know, 13, 14, 15, something like
Right.
that. He has enormous experience in building large language models, AIs, all those vision systems, all the things that, go into doing this. So it doesn't take from their achievement. It's incredible. The response from the head of Google, what's his name? Oh, I can't remember the guy's name now.
Which
Uh,
Demis or
no, the actual the head of
oh,
Alphabet.
sorry, yes. Nope,
It was
forgotten.
it was kind of a passive aggressive sort of response. It was like, congratulations on your response, tremendous achievement. But it was, kind of like, but wait till next week and I release my next model. It's going to totally wipe you.
So you mentioned about Grok being, or Grok heavy. Is that what it's called? Grok heavy being
Rock heavy, yes.
300 a month, which is, so it's interesting for a few reasons. But it does remind me of one of the stories we wanted to talk about, which was basically how much cash these companies are burning through, and how they're not their annual losses are absolutely massive. So a tech critic
Not
called,
all of them now. Some of them are burning through lots of money.
who would you say is not burning through lots of money?
I'd say they're all burning through. Well, I'd say that relative to you and me, I'd say they're all burning through lots of money. But I think that relative to each other, some of them are burning through a lot of money, and I'd say some of them are. I mean, I would say that Anthropic, I wouldn't be surprised if they were close to breaking even on certain basis.
I'm pretty sure their losses are significant still, from what I was reading.
They get a
But
lot of investment, right? Because they got another investment this week from Amazon. They got another couple of billion. But I do wonder if those are infrastructure investments. So, they're paying for, but I,
yeah,
I wonder on a day-to-day basis, like on a cash basis of money in, money out. I think their revenue is maybe 40% of OpenAI's revenue, but I don't imagine that their overheads are anywhere near the same as OpenAI's overheads. So I
no,
don't
and
think, but
I mean,
OpenAI, I believe, is what you're saying is what you're referring to.
yeah, like Futurism. So Futurism.com had this article, and they were referencing this guy Ed Zitron, who's a tech critic, and he's saying basically we're headed for what he calls a subprime AI crisis, and he's basically likening it to when the banks lent out way more credit than they could ever hope to make back. And he's saying like ChatGPT is valued at 30 times its revenue, which he basically says means that their kind of forecasting is magical thinking more than based on any financial reality.
I disagree
Um,
with that, by the way.
I mean, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. I mean,
30 times revenue isn't outrageous for a tech company. That's not too bad. And 30 times revenue for a tech company that's creating, a silicon god that's going to be omnipotent and used everywhere, I don't think is terribly. It's
if
it's more of a
yeah, if it's ever realized
if.
or if it's ever reached,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
I mean, because he points out, if so, they've got 800 million weekly active users, but they're mostly free users. Um, and so yeah, he doesn't think that they're going to find a path to profitability quickly enough.
And that comes back to my point about Anthropic. So Anthropic have, I mean, a tiny percentage. It's interesting, right? They have a tiny percentage, the same number of users, but those users are typically paying users, especially when you've got things like Claude Code, right? And there your Claude Code eats through the tokens, right? You're going to be paying your money on that one. So I think I'd love to know, the number I'd love to know is the number of paying users from each company, because even though Claude might have a very small number percentage wise, I'd say when it comes down to average revenue per user, I'd say Claude's doing okay.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't make a note of the figures, but I definitely saw figures showing that like that they were all basically losing money hand over fist.
Can I just throw out again, because we broadcast this on LinkedIn, right? So I just have to throw it out there, right? Did you see this week that Meta are paying, that the head of Apple AI, they paid him $100 million, $100 million or more? Was it $300 million over 4 years
There
to
is
go and move?
so when I read this first about the 100 million signing bonus, my brain just could not compute. My brain was like, that doesn't make sense. And so I got into my head, 1 million signing bonus. Yeah. What's the headline about that? I get it. That kind of makes sense.
100 million. 100 million.
Wait, what are those 2 zeros doing there?
So, I mean, I'm not the head of AI for Apple Inc., right? I'm not anywhere close. The guy's obviously a genius, right? But I'm about 100th as good as him, you know? I'd do it for $1 million. But he's not alone, is the incredible thing. They bought, what else? They hired people from Anthropic. They've hired people from OpenAI. They did an acqui-hire where they bought a company just to hire the talent within it. All of these people, they're offering them 10, 20 million. And if you want to go back, by the way, and talk about your friend Elon Musk, for a fraction of the cost has actually delivered. Whereas, Zuck, with all his money and everything, is really fine. It just puts into perspective how good, what Elon Musk has managed to pull off.
Yeah. But I mean, this is all, it's fascinating because this is all of this spending is trying to reach like AGI essentially. And, over the last couple of episodes, you've been kind of saying, well, yeah, like OpenAI, unlikely to get there. Google, maybe. We do have some confidence in Jan LeCun in terms of like your theory of how AGI might be reached. Jan LeCun seems to be kind of on that path. So maybe that's why they're willing to spend that much money, that they just absolutely need those people because they have absolute faith that they can get there. But certainly,
Tell you another thing that's interesting in that context, right? So, is that we believe that in the next week or two, OpenAI are going to release an open source model, and everything that we've heard about it says that this open source model is going to be great. It's going to kick the ass of DeepSeek R2 or whatever else is coming out that's open source. It's going to be a SOTA, right, state of the art open source model. Now, if you had a concern about the financial viability of OpenAI, well, actually, an open source model is a very valuable thing to have in your back pocket, because let's say you're building, again, if you're a big business continuity is a big issue for you. And if OpenAI went bankrupt to the morning, I'm sure Microsoft would step in. But, if you wanted to buy yourself an insurance policy, well, having an open source model is the best insurance policy that you can have. You can just fire it up on a machine and run it. So, it's an interesting take on the financial viability. I would be concerned about OpenAI too. I mean, I keep it. I do. I'm old enough to remember the initial .com boom. I was a bit nerdy when I was younger. I'm not sure that you were quite as nerdy.
I was there.
and I remember that. I tell you what I remember, right? I remember the time there was hearing rumors about Cisco, and it was the network switches, and they had this, too many network switches, and they couldn't sell them. This was maybe 6 months before the crash. Right. And there was other people saying, inventory. It was all about inventory, and there was too much inventory, right? Which is just physical stuff. And I wonder, you've got Project Stargate and you've got all these, physical buildings that are about to be built. And I wonder, is that going to be our inventory when, they build these buildings, they spend all these billions and billions and billions, and then they realize, damn, we actually don't need those. We just need that building. And that's going to cause the crash, right? That's the inventory that causes the crash.
Yeah, well, that's funny because when I first read this article, I was about OpenAI operating at a loss for so long, etc. My first thought was like social media platforms operating at a loss for ages and blah 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 blah. But of course, that's totally different because as ChatGPT pointed out to me, they could their motto was like grow first, monetize later, but it was really cheap for them to grow. It didn't cost anything to bring on a user. So ChatGPT was like, you know what? It's more like the laying of fiber for the internet when the boom first happened, and everybody was borrowing huge amounts of money to lay this fiber because they were saying that I can't remember what it was, internet growth was like doubling every 100 days or something, which turned out to be absolute rubbish. Then the crash happened and you had all of this infrastructure and it was totally unnecessary. It was way too much. And something like, I don't know, 2/3 or something of the major telecoms companies, listed telecoms companies, ended up going bust.
Yeah.
But then broadband happened, video streaming happened, peer-to-peer happened, and suddenly all that fiber was needed again.
The same thing. I think the same. You'll see a same pattern here, right? And I will say another reason why Google are going to win is that OpenAI are having to fund this through stock options and through VC, right? Getting investment. Anthropic are having to fund this through. Now they're backed by Amazon, right? So they may be in a better position. But Google have a huge revenue stream, right on their doorstep. So I think in terms of staying power, Google probably are the best position in terms of just being able to ride out that storm when it inevitably comes.
Yeah.
Very quickly, Marco Rubio. I just have it. Just quickly, give me the 2 minutes on. So Marco Rubio got into hot water this week because of somebody cloning his voice. Am I correct?
Yeah. So high-level politicians were getting texts and voice notes from Marco Rubio. And turned out it wasn't him at all. It was a voice clone. And they were clearly trying to get sensitive information from all of these high-level figures. What I find really interesting about the whole thing is that the obvious question is, did it work? Did they hand over sensitive information? What's at risk? What's at stake? What harm has been done? And nobody is saying there. It's like, oh, it's an ongoing investigation. We can't discuss that. But which leads me to believe that there may have been harm done here, because I kind of feel like if there was no harm done, they'd be very, very, very quick to say so.
Yet again, I think it's the third degree. That's what you call a non-confirmation confirmation in the business.
Yeah.
But look, there's an easy solution to this.
What is it?
Hire people from Cork. We've been trying to clone your voice for years.
Yes, it's true.
And we haven't been able to do it.
I've not been able to clone my voice. It's very true. Yes. Everyone
just
hire people from Cork, or everyone should just start doing a Cork accent.
No, God, no. Jesus. Sounds like a living hell. Listen to me, you've got a story to warm the cockle of my hearts before we leave everybody for the glorious weekend that is outside.
This is a crazy story. This is an absolutely crazy story. And I'll admit it's only tangentially related to AI, but you think I'm bad with my AI safety views and my doomer sensibilities.
Loosen up a bit.
But wait till you hear this story to hear how moderate I am. So this was in the New York Times, and the headline was, "She wanted to save the world from AI, then the killings started." Now,
yes,
this is going to be a movie. Whatever about the Sam Altman being fired and then rehired, this is going to be a movie. And I'm sorry, again, I should not be laughing because people are dead, but it's so crazy. It reads like a film script. It doesn't seem real, and that's why I think I'm having a little bit of trouble taking it overly seriously. Because wait till you hear this. So this woman called Ziz Lasota, she was associated with a crowd called the Rationalists. Now, I can't say I had heard of them before, but apparently they're this online group, and they're tech and philosophy nerds. They're obviously, they think of themselves as being highly rational, and so they look at improving the world through logical thinking. And they're really, really concerned about whether artificial intelligence will destroy humanity. So they're very, very tied into AI safety.
You should join the group.
The rationalists, I might. The rationalists, I just might. They say that like apparently Peter Thiel and Sam Bankman-Fried at some different points were kind of in the community, and apparently they've influenced people like Elon Musk and Sam Altman and all the big names. But 6 people are dead, and Zia Lasota is now in jail and was arrested for things like trespassing and resisting arrest, but is like tied to all of these deaths, even though I don't think she herself necessarily killed anybody. But what happened was she started to form a kind of a gang within the rationalists, and then eventually they were kicked out of the rationalists, and the rationalists are very much trying to distance themselves and saying,
let's say they are.
Nothing to do with us, absolutely not. And they are kind of wondering how they could have spotted the danger sooner. So, but this gang started even protesting the rationalists, and the cops were called because they were protesting this rationalist event. And somebody called the cops and said that the gang had guns. Now they didn't have guns, but this ended up in arrests, and there was their court cases, etc., etc. So, in the meantime, the Ziz Lesota's gang, they move on to this lot where, because they don't all have a lot of money. Ziz, I think, was not employed, but was contributing online to all of these discussions and conversations and forming her gang around her. And they end up moving on to this lot for very, very cheap rent, because they're basically in caravans on this lot or whatever. Anyway, COVID happens, and there's an eviction moratorium, and so they stop paying even this small amount of rent they had to pay. But COVID passed, the eviction moratorium was lifted, and so the landlord tried to get them evicted, which is, I guess fair enough.
Yeah.
But so they call him to look at a tap that's leaking, and when he goes to look at the tap, he blacks out. That's what it felt like to him. And when he wakes up, he has been stabbed multiple times, and there's like a samurai sword sticking out of him.
No.
So what happens next? He pulls his gun out, and I'm sorry, I should not be laughing. He pulls his gun out and he shoots 2 of them, killing one of them and wounding the other.
What?
I mean, sorry, like straight away when I read that, I immediately thought of, I don't know what film is it from, about never bring a knife to a gunfight.
It's still Western, isn't it?
So you like this is bad enough as it is, but then the next thing that happens is the parents of someone in this gang are shot dead. There's a link to the bullets that tie back to their daughter, who is linked to the gang, but they fail to actually tie the gang to the murders. Next, the landlord, who had already been stabbed but survived, is now stabbed and is killed by another one of the gang, presumably the working hypothesis being to stop him from testifying in the upcoming court case about the original stabbing. This is just insane.
There's a couple of lessons. Sorry, go on. Tell me more.
I completely forgot to mention so after the protest, Ziz Lesota drowns. Her sister says she fell off a boat and drowned. She's dead. So she's off.
Is it fell off a boat, or did she?
When the landlord was stabbed for the first time, the cops were called and found Ziz in one of the caravans, alive and well. And that's not even the end of it. 2 more of the gang are then pulled over after being reported to police for having guns and acting suspiciously. And they come out of the car shooting. They kill one of the officers. The officers kill one of them. And so you've got 6 people dead, and all kind of tangentially linked back to this desire to make AI safe for humanity. So there was a quote that really stood out in the article. And the quote was, it was from someone called Anna Salomon. She's the director of the Center of Applied Rationality. And she said, there's this all or nothing thing where AI will bring utopia by solving all of the problems if it's successfully controlled, or it'll literally kill everyone. And she's making the point that that's already kind of a chunk of the way towards doomsday cult dynamics. And then another rationalist writer called Ozzie Brennan said, that basically you can't live in the world acting like the world's going to end in 5 years, even if it is, because you're just going to go insane. So I just thought, it's just what a crazy time we live in. What a crazy time we live in for AI, but also like the weird knock-on effects of
No,
some
you
of
know, there was
the.
this story. There was another story we were going to talk about today, right? We're not going to get time, but it's about AI causing psychosis in people, right? And it's very tied
Weird
into,
knock-on
right?
effects. Yeah.
Weird. And then remember we had the guy in Google who said that AI had become sentient, and he got fired, and he had all these traces, right, and whatever. And if we look through all the different instances of weird things that have happened, AI has never actually done anything bad yet, right? Not that I've seen, nothing really bad. However, people's reaction to AI has been really extreme in some cases. It does play with your head or not everyone's head, right? But it
Yeah.
can play with people's heads in ways that's just totally unexplainable.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So there you go.
Absolutely.
AI, it's fine. As the people we need to be careful of, Frank. Again.
There's a lot of truth. There's a lot of truth to that. Yeah. So, but I bet you think my AI safety views and views on regulation, I bet you think they're a lot more moderate now after hearing that story.
Well, thank God you're moderate. That's true. Actually, that's a great point. Very good, Frank. Until this time next week, enjoy the sun. Have a great weekend.
Have a good one.
Talk to you soon.